Hello everyone and welcome to the craziest game from round 1, not just from round 1, I would say from day 1 of the FIDE World Rapid Championship. It is from round 1 and it features Kyrgyz versus WR Chess. Kyrgyz represented by Mikhail Markov in this instance, and WR Chess by Praggnanandhaa. And there is a significant rating difference here. So if you look at, someone rated 2343 is playing Praggnanandhaa. Probably Pragg is playing blindfolded alongside maybe against 20 other opponents, but you know that would not be the case in this game. So it's really spectacular. It's if you run this game through an engine, it will just start giving out question marks. This is a bad move, this is a bad move, this is a bad move for Mikhail and Praggnanandhaa alike. It's one of those slugfest bar fight type games. It's as if Rashid Nejmetdinov and Mikhail Tal played that fifth game that never happened. You will love this one. So let's check it out. Mikhail Markov from Kyrgyzstan with white opens with pawn to c4. We have pawn to e5 by Pragg, and already a surprise on move 2, pawn to a3. I believe this is nothing. It's probably something to take Praggnanandhaa out of opening preparation. We have knight to f6, we have knight to c3, and pawn to d5. Captures, and pawn to e4. And here Pragg took his time already. We're only on move 5, and it's, it doesn't matter who Pragg plays. It doesn't matter if it's Magnus Carlsen, if it's anyone, you're not gonna make Pragg burn time on move 5. But that's exactly what happens here. If you ask the engine, there are 3 engine recommendations here. One is to capture on c3, one is to go back to b6, and the third one is to go to f4, but not Pragg. Pragg actually goes to knight to e7, and he spends a full minute on this decision. So this is not in his preparation, and it is also a position that has never been reached before already as of move 5. So let's see what happens. We have knight to f3, knight b to c6, and bishop to c4. So it's a pretty standard position. The knight on c3, bishop on c4. Pragg has a knight on c6, and this knight on e7. The pawn's on e5, e4, but the c pawn is missing, and you will still have to waste another move with the knight, then with the bishop, if you are planning the castle king side. So knight g6, something maybe like you would have in a cozier defense in a Ruy Lopez. We have pawn to d3, bishop to e7, and now pawn to h4. Going after that pawn to h5 right away. And it seems like you're offering the pawn on h4, but not really. If you capture the pawn, then just knight captures on h4, and after bishop captures on h4, there's queen to h5 with a double attack on the bishop and also an attack on the f7 pawn. So that's the trick Mikhail was hoping to catch Pragg in. But Pragg just goes bishop to g4. As h4 was played, you can no longer bring the pawn to h3, so bishop to g4 makes perfect sense. Pawn to h5 and knight to h4 now. We have king to f1. Mikhail just playing, in the style of his of a certain player also named Mikhail. We have queen to d7. Bishop captures on h5 could be played, but Pragg doesn't go for the pawn. He wants to develop, he wants the castle, and he is also burning time. We have knight to d5, and bishop captures on f3. We have g captures, and now knight to d4 with some pressure on that f3 pawn. We have pawn to h6, just pushing pawns here. Incredible how Mikhail Markov is playing against Praggnanandhaa. And now after pawn to g5, for example, Pragg's position is overwhelming, but it seems that the position is so crazy that Pragg just doesn't find it. He plays pawn to c6, attacks the knight, and knight captures on e7, queen captures, and pawn to f4. We have g captures on h6, and now queen to h5. Putting pressure on the knight. So what can you do? Knight g6, pawn to f5, knight to f4 attacking the queen, and now just bishop captures on f4. We have e captures on f4. Captures wasn't played. This would be good actually if it was played, because now pawn to e5 is very, very strong, and there's not much Pragg can do here. So this is resigns territory if played precisely. But after this knight to f4 move, Pragg managed to trick Mikhail, and Mikhail played queen captures on h6, allowing Pragg somewhat back into the game. Pragg castles queenside, Bishop captures on f4, e captures, and now queen captures on f4, and now pawn to h5. Pragg just starts pushing his passed pawn. Rook to c1, nicely aligning the rook with the king on c8, and Pragg goes rook d to g8. We have pawn to b4, and pawn to a6. We have queen to e3 attacking the knight, and rook back to d8 defending the knight. And the situation on the clock is already quite alarming for Pragg. It's 2 minutes for Mikhail, 46 seconds for Praggnanandhaa, and we have bishop to d5. The precise way to play this is a4 b5, but okay, a little time on the clock. We have bishop to b5. The bishop is of course uncapturable due to the pin on the c file, but there is knight captures on f5. And what is Pragg's idea behind knight captures on f5? Well, the idea is that if you capture with the pawn, then the bishop is no longer defended by the pawn, and you can trade queens and just play rook captures on d5, and you will have a slightly better rook endgame. But we have queen to a7 by Mikhail. Okay, so what is happening here? Rook to h6, adding another defender to the c6 pawn, but if you can add a defender, you can also remove the defender, and that's why rook captures on h5. Sacrificing a rook, which you don't have to capture, but if you don't, I mean, what else do you play? It's not like you can keep the rook there. And if you play something like rook to g6, then you can play e captures on f5, and there's just no good move here. I mean, your rook is hanging, your bishop is the bishop still cannot be captured. You could play rook captures here, but then f captures on g6, and if rook captures on h5, rook captures on c6 is now deadly. You cannot capture as the queen is hanging. The knight no longer defends it, and you can't not capture. If something like this, then queen captures on b7, and you just get checkmated. So there's nothing to be done there. So after rook captures on h5, rook captures on h5, and now rook captures on c6 with check, which is just odd, as the queen is defended by the knight. But there are many ways you could play this. In the game, king to d7 was played by Pragg, probably because Pragg still wants to win this game. The problem with capturing the rook is that you have queen to a8 with check, and after king to c7, there's queen captures on c6 with check. And now there's no checkmate, but you do have an instant perpetual here with queen c6, queen to a8 check. So I imagine Pragg wanted to avoid this, and he plays for the win. King to d7, queen captures on b7 check, king to e8, and now rook to c7, and we've reached the position from the thumbnail. Look at this. This is, I mean, it looks overwhelming. The queen is attacked, the knight is hanging, the pawn on f7 will hang if the queen moves. Are you just getting checkmated here, or is there something that Pragg can do here? Well, believe it or not, there are more than one way to there's more than one way to play this, as the quote above the board suggests. But Pragg goes for knight to e3 with check. There's also a fairly straightforward draw with rook to h1 check, but that's I'm guessing Pragg saw this, but he just didn't want to play for a draw. Point being that if you go to e2, then knight to d4 check will just be winning for black. So you have to go to g2, attack the rook, and now black just gives up the rook. And after king captures, okay, you will have a perpetual here. After something like king f1, queen d1 check, you go back, queen to g4 check, and so on and so on. But not Pragg. Pragg goes knight to e3 with check, and what do you do now? Is that a free knight? Well, if you capture the knight, then queen to f6 with check, and you're the one who's getting checkmated here. For example, king to e2, rook to h2 with check, and there's no move here. You can play king to e1, queen to f2 with check, and that's just going to be checkmate. So after knight to e3 check, king to e2, obviously the queen has to move now, but no, Pragg plays knight captures on d5. He gives up the queen, but he will have two rooks and a knight for a queen. So rook captures, knight captures, and now just queen captures on a6. So how do we assess this position? Well, we don't. We're just gonna see what they play. I mean, it's two rooks, a knight, and a pawn versus a queen and 5 pawns. This is unexplored territory. So okay, knight g6. Pragg has to fully coordinate his pieces if he is to have a chance in this game. And well, Mikhail's chance lies in advancing that past b pawn to victory, as you know, that's often the case in chess. So pawn to b5, king to e3 was a bit more precise here, stopping knight to f4, but he wants to hurry up and advance that passed pawn up the board. Knight f4 check, king e3, knight captures on d3, queen to c6 check, we have king e7 and pawn to b6. We have rook to h3 with check, And now Mikhail is in a bit of a pickle here, because there's no good square for the king. Covered by the rook, covered by the knight, covered by the pawn. Not a lot of squares covered by the rook. So basically you have d2 and e2, and it doesn't matter where you go. You block with f3. If you go to d2, then just knight to b4 check, a discovery, and you lose your queen. If you go to e2, then a slightly trickier line, but knight f4 check. You cannot go up the board, you cannot go to the queen side, you have to go down the board, and then rook to h1 is just checkmate. So you're only left with pawn to f3. This is exactly what Mikhail played, but there's only one problem, but it's a pretty big one. And I don't even have to ask you guys to pause the video, because you see it. Of course, rook captures on f3 check. And you cannot you cannot capture it, but you cannot not capture it. If you capture, of course, knight to e5 check picks up the queen, so that's out of the question. So king to e2 was played, and now look at this. The position is so complicated that Pragg again returns the position to sort of an equilibrium. He plays rook to f6, which we are going to discuss. But the real way to win this was rook f2 check, and after king e3, now just rook b2, and you stop the passed pawn. That's the idea. If b7, rook d7, and the passed pawn has been stopped, you're just going to capture it on the next move. But, you know, good luck finding that with so little time on the clock. Rook to f6 was played, attacking the queen. Now queen b5, preparing to advance the passed pawn. Knight to c1 check, king to e1, and Pragg goes for a bit of a repetition here to gain some time on the clock. King e2, and now rook to f2 with check. We have king to e3, and now rook to b2, attacking the queen. And the position is still a draw, but you have to find queen to g5 check here. I mean, I don't see who finds this, but queen to g5 ensures a perpetual, because it doesn't matter where you go. For example, even if f6, queen g7 check, you will go to e6, queen to g4 check. If you go to the queen side, then you can capture the knight, and then it's again a draw. If you don't, then you just keep repeating, and it's just a draw. But after rook b2, queen to c4 was played, and now the position is winning for Praggnanandhaa. He plays rook to d7, which means that pawn is never crossing b7. So queen to c6, and now just rook to b3, and the position is now hopeless. We have king to e2, knight to e5, and queen to c5 with check. We have king to e6, and he was in this position on move 47 that Mikhail Markov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So, I mean, what a game. I actually had no idea who won, or was it a draw, before I started analyzing it. And then when I saw what was happening, I was like, wow, this will be a spectacular win for Mikhail. And then all of a sudden, Pragg just finds all of that wizardry, and then he goes into this knight and two rooks versus a queen. Let's call it middle end game, and he emerges victorious. I mean, what a game. But yeah, it takes two to create a masterpiece, and a masterpiece the two of them definitely have created. And here you resign because, well, you're just getting checkmated. It doesn't matter. Let's say you play pawn to a4, you want to push the a-pawn because that's your only plan here. It's a forced mate in 6, I believe. Rook to b2 check, you're going to play king to e3, rook to d3 with check, king f4, you just follow up the king, rook f2, sorry, not rook f2, that's guarded by the queen, rook to f3 check, king to g5, and now rook g2 check, king to h4, and you want rook h3 to be checkmate, but you cannot, so you just drive the king up the board, knight g6 check, king to h5, and rook to h3, and that will be checkmate. Lost the icons there. So yeah, I mean, what a game. A lot of you guys recommended it, so thank you for that. I'm not sure if I would have spotted this one. True beauty. So if you have any more, do use hashtag suggestion, and I will do my best to cover as many as possible. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Big congratulations to both of them, especially to Mikhail Markov, who, I mean, challenged Pragg and also almost defeated Praggnanandhaa by playing c4 and pawn to a3. I mean, just absolutely outstanding. It just shows that it doesn't matter if you're a creative player, if you're a good player, you can play anything against anyone. Anthony Miles versus Anatoly Karpov comes to mind, or rather Anatoly Karpov versus Anthony Miles. Facing e4 with a6. I mean, chess is just an amazing game. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Darren Little, Jerry Drever, the animated chemist, Roger Stone, and Robert Araton for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, such as this one and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day, and of course, the upcoming weekend. See you soon.